Question 1. The monitoring system demonstrates a significant increase in customer engagement with existing digital services, prompting the business development team to explore opportunities for developing new, data-driven business models. The team is considering leveraging aggregated customer usage patterns and preferences to design and launch innovative subscription services. What is the most appropriate initial step for the business development team to take? Option A. Immediately begin designing the new subscription services based on the observed customer engagement trends, assuming that aggregated data usage is inherently permissible for innovation. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive review of all existing customer agreements and applicable data protection regulations to ascertain the precise scope of permissible data usage for developing new business models. Option C. Rely solely on the general advice from the company's legal department regarding data privacy, without undertaking a specific analysis of the proposed data utilization for the new services. Option D. Proceed with developing the new services by anonymizing the customer data to a level deemed sufficient by the team, without further external validation of the anonymization process. The correct answer is A. Immediately begin designing the new subscription services based on the observed customer engagement trends, assuming that aggregated data usage is inherently permissible for innovation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in the context of developing innovative business models, specifically concerning the ethical and regulatory implications of leveraging customer data for new service development. The core challenge lies in balancing the pursuit of innovation and competitive advantage with the paramount duty to protect customer privacy and comply with data protection regulations. Professionals must exercise careful judgment to ensure that data utilization is both legally permissible and ethically sound, avoiding any practices that could lead to data misuse, breaches, or erosion of customer trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of existing customer agreements and applicable data protection regulations to determine the scope of permissible data usage for developing new business models. This approach is right because it prioritizes compliance and ethical conduct. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, which are fundamental to most data protection frameworks, such as the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. If the jurisdiction were the EU, or similar principles under UK data protection law if that were the specified jurisdiction. By first understanding the legal boundaries and contractual obligations, the business development professional ensures that any proposed innovation is built on a foundation of lawful and ethical data handling, thereby mitigating legal risks and maintaining customer confidence. This proactive stance is a hallmark of responsible business development. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that immediately proceeds with developing new services based on aggregated customer data without first verifying consent or contractual permissions fails to adhere to data protection principles. This constitutes a regulatory failure by potentially violating clauses related to data processing and consent, and an ethical failure by disregarding customer privacy expectations and trust. Another incorrect approach, which involves anonymizing data without a clear understanding of the anonymization technique's effectiveness or its compliance with regulatory standards for de-identification, also presents significant risks. If the anonymization is insufficient, the data may still be considered personal data, leading to regulatory noncompliance. Ethically, it is a failure to adequately protect individuals if their data can be re-identified. Finally, an approach that relies solely on internal legal counsel's broad advice without conducting a specific review of customer agreements and the nuances of the proposed data usage is insufficient. While legal counsel is vital, the responsibility for ensuring specific compliance with contractual terms and the detailed requirements of data protection laws rests with the business development professional. This approach risks overlooking specific contractual limitations or regulatory interpretations that could render the proposed model non-compliant. Professional reasoning. Professionals in business development must adopt a risk-aware and compliance-first mindset when innovating. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the regulatory and contractual landscape relevant to the proposed innovation. 2. Assessing the potential impact on customer privacy and data rights. 3. Consulting with legal and compliance experts to validate the approach. 4. Developing the innovation within the established legal and ethical boundaries. This structured approach ensures that innovation is pursued responsibly and sustainably. Question 2. Benchmark analysis indicates that a business development team is under pressure to demonstrate significant progress in a new market. The team is considering which key performance indicators, KPI, to prioritize for reporting to senior management and investors. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of ethical business development and regulatory compliance for a certified business development professional? Option A. Selecting KPIs that highlight early-stage pipeline growth, even if the likelihood of conversion is uncertain, to showcase potential future success. Option B. Focusing on KPIs that measure the conversion rate of qualified leads to closed deals and the revenue generated from new business, ensuring these are objectively verifiable and directly linked to business development efforts. Option C. Prioritizing KPIs that reflect the number of initial client engagements and meetings held, as these indicate high levels of activity and market penetration efforts. Option D. Emphasizing KPIs related to the total number of marketing collateral distributed and social media impressions, as these demonstrate broad market awareness. The correct answer is C. Prioritizing KPIs that reflect the number of initial client engagements and meetings held, as these indicate high levels of activity and market penetration efforts. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a business development professional to balance the strategic imperative of growth with the ethical and regulatory obligations of accurate reporting and stakeholder trust. The pressure to demonstrate progress can lead to the temptation of manipulating or misrepresenting KPIs, which can have severe consequences. Careful judgment is required to ensure that KPIs are not only aligned with business objectives, but also reflect genuine performance and are reported transparently. The correct approach involves selecting KPIs that are directly attributable to business development activities and can be objectively measured, aligning with the principles of good governance and ethical conduct expected of a certified business development professional. This approach ensures that performance reporting is credible and supports informed decision-making by stakeholders. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing financial reporting and corporate governance, implicitly or explicitly demand accuracy and transparency in performance metrics. Ethical codes of conduct for professionals also emphasize integrity and honesty in all dealings, including performance reporting. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on vanity metrics, such as the number of initial meetings without regard to their conversion potential, fails to provide a true picture of business development effectiveness. This can mislead stakeholders about the actual progress and return on investment, potentially violating principles of fair representation and transparency. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes short-term, easily achievable targets over long-term strategic goals can lead to a misallocation of resources and a neglect of more impactful, albeit harder to measure, initiatives. This can undermine the sustainable growth objectives of the organization and may be seen as a failure to act in the best long-term interests of the company and its stakeholders, potentially contravening fiduciary duties if applicable. An incorrect approach that involves selectively reporting only positive results while omitting negative trends or underperforming areas creates a biased and incomplete view of performance. This lack of transparency can erode trust with stakeholders and may violate regulations requiring full and fair disclosure of material information. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's strategic objectives, a thorough knowledge of relevant regulatory requirements and ethical standards, and a commitment to data integrity. Business development professionals should always prioritize KPIs that are relevant, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound, SMART, and ensure that these KPIs are reported accurately and comprehensively to all relevant stakeholders. When in doubt, seeking guidance from legal counsel or compliance officers is advisable. Question 3. System analysis indicates that a business development team is experiencing inefficiencies in lead qualification and follow-up, impacting their ability to convert prospects into clients. To address this, the team is considering several process optimization strategies. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of effective business development strategy and planning within the U.S. regulatory framework? Prioritizing both efficiency and compliance. Option A. Conduct a comprehensive audit of current lead management workflows, identify specific bottlenecks and data integrity issues, and then implement targeted improvements to streamline the qualification and follow-up processes, ensuring all data handling complies with relevant U.S. privacy regulations. Option B. Immediately invest in a cutting-edge marketing automation platform to generate a higher volume of leads, assuming that increased quantity will naturally improve conversion rates. Option C. Reassign existing personnel to new roles within the business development department without providing updated training or clear guidelines on their new responsibilities, expecting them to adapt organically to improve efficiency. Option D. Implement a new, aggressive sales script for all client interactions, focusing on closing deals quickly without first assessing the impact on client satisfaction or the compliance of the script with fair advertising practices. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive audit of current lead management workflows, identify specific bottlenecks and data integrity issues, and then implement targeted improvements to streamline the qualification and follow-up processes, ensuring all data handling complies with relevant U.S. privacy regulations. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in business development, optimizing internal processes to support strategic growth initiatives. The professional must balance the need for efficiency and effectiveness with the imperative to adhere to regulatory frameworks governing business operations and data handling. The challenge lies in identifying a process optimization approach that not only enhances business development capabilities, but also aligns with the specific regulatory requirements of the Certified Business Development Professional, CBDP, exam's jurisdiction, which is assumed to be the United States for this context. Failure to consider these regulatory nuances can lead to non-compliance, reputational damage, and operational inefficiencies. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic review of existing business development workflows, identifying bottlenecks and areas for improvement, and then implementing changes that enhance data accuracy, streamline communication, and ensure compliance with relevant U.S. regulations, such as those pertaining to data privacy, e.g., aspects of CCPA if applicable to the business's data handling, and fair business practices. This approach prioritizes a thorough understanding of both operational needs and the legal/ethical landscape. By focusing on data integrity and compliant communication channels, the business development strategy is built on a foundation that is both efficient and legally sound, directly supporting the CBDP mandate to foster ethical and effective business growth. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing a new customer relationship management (CRM) system without a thorough audit of existing data privacy protocols would be an incorrect approach. This could lead to the mishandling of sensitive client information, potentially violating U.S. data protection laws and ethical standards for client confidentiality. Adopting a rapid, top-down implementation of new sales targets and performance metrics without first optimizing the underlying processes that support these targets is also incorrect. This approach risks creating unrealistic expectations and placing undue pressure on the business development team, potentially leading to unethical sales practices or burnout, and failing to address the root causes of any performance gaps. Focusing solely on increasing lead generation volume through aggressive outbound marketing without assessing the quality of leads or the compliance of the marketing methods with U.S. advertising standards, e.g., Can Spam Act, is another incorrect approach. This can result in wasted resources, damage to brand reputation, and potential legal repercussions for non-compliant marketing activities. Professional reasoning. Professionals in business development must adopt a holistic approach to process optimization. This involves a continuous cycle of assessment, planning, implementation, and review, always with an eye towards regulatory compliance and ethical conduct. The decision-making process should begin with a clear understanding of the strategic objectives, followed by an analysis of current processes and their alignment with legal and ethical requirements. Any proposed optimization must be evaluated for its impact on data security, client privacy, fair competition, and overall compliance with the relevant U.S. regulatory framework. This ensures that process improvements contribute to sustainable and ethical business growth. Question 4. Compliance review shows that the proposed business development plan for the next fiscal year includes aggressive revenue targets and a strategy to secure new clients by highlighting the company's cutting-edge proprietary software. However, internal discussions reveal that the software is still in beta testing, has significant bugs, and its full capabilities are not yet realized. The business development team is considering presenting the software as fully functional and ready for immediate deployment to meet the ambitious targets. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional ethical standards and regulatory expectations for a certified business development professional? Option A. Focus solely on the company's existing, proven service offerings and delay the introduction of the proprietary software into client proposals until it is fully developed and tested, even if this means missing out on immediate business opportunities. Option B. Proceed with presenting the proprietary software as fully functional and ready for immediate deployment, focusing on its perceived future benefits to secure client contracts, with the intention of addressing any issues post-contract signing. Option C. Develop a revised business development plan that sets realistic revenue targets based on the current, fully functional software capabilities and clearly communicates the development roadmap and timeline for the proprietary software's enhancements to potential clients, emphasizing its future potential without misrepresenting its current state. Option D. Highlight the proprietary software's advanced theoretical concepts and potential future applications in presentations, while acknowledging that it is currently in a developmental phase and may not be fully deployable for immediate client needs. The correct answer is C. Develop a revised business development plan that sets realistic revenue targets based on the current, fully functional software capabilities and clearly communicates the development roadmap and timeline for the proprietary software's enhancements to potential clients, emphasizing its future potential without misrepresenting its current state. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing aggressive business development goals with the ethical obligation to provide accurate and non-misleading information to potential clients. The Certified Business Development Professional (CBDP) designation implies a commitment to upholding professional standards, which include integrity and transparency. The core of the challenge lies in the tension between achieving ambitious targets and the potential for misrepresenting capabilities or future outcomes to secure business. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the pursuit of growth does not compromise ethical conduct or regulatory compliance. The correct approach involves developing a business development plan that sets realistic and achievable objectives, supported by strategies and tactics that are transparent and verifiable. This approach prioritizes integrity by ensuring that all communications and proposals accurately reflect the company's current capabilities, resources, and realistic projections. Regulatory and ethical justification stems from the fundamental principles of fair dealing and honesty in business. For a CBDP, this means adhering to any applicable codes of conduct or professional standards that mandate truthful representation and avoiding deceptive practices. The focus is on building long-term client relationships based on trust and demonstrable value, rather than short-term gains achieved through exaggeration. An incorrect approach that involves overstating the company's current technological capabilities to secure a contract fails because it constitutes misrepresentation. This is an ethical failure as it deceives the potential client about the true state of affairs, leading to a breach of trust. It can also have regulatory implications if such misrepresentation violates consumer protection laws or industry-specific regulations that prohibit deceptive advertising or fraudulent claims. Another incorrect approach, which involves promising future product enhancements that are not yet fully developed or guaranteed, is also professionally unacceptable. This is an ethical failure because it creates unrealistic expectations and potentially leads the client to make decisions based on speculative future benefits rather than current realities. Ethically, a CBDP should be able to substantiate any claims made, and speculative promises lack substantiation. This can also lead to contractual disputes and damage the company's reputation. A third incorrect approach, which involves downplaying potential risks or challenges associated with a proposed solution to make it appear more attractive, is ethically flawed. This failure to disclose material information prevents the client from making a fully informed decision. It erodes trust and can lead to significant problems down the line if those risks materialize, potentially resulting in legal repercussions for the company and the professional. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a rigorous assessment of the proposed business development plan against ethical principles and any relevant regulatory requirements. Professionals should ask themselves, is this claim verifiable? Are we being fully transparent about our capabilities and limitations? Are we setting realistic expectations for the client? If there is any doubt about the accuracy or transparency of a proposed strategy or tactic, it is essential to revise it to ensure it aligns with professional integrity and regulatory compliance. This often involves seeking input from legal counsel or senior management to ensure all aspects are thoroughly vetted. Question 5. Market research demonstrates a significant unmet need for a new financial technology service. A business development team is eager to capitalize on this opportunity and has identified potential strategic partners. Which approach best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical considerations for navigating the early stages of the business development lifecycle? Option A. Immediately begin drafting partnership agreements and initiating joint marketing efforts to secure first-mover advantage. Option B. Launch a pilot program with a select group of users without formal agreements or regulatory review to gather initial feedback. Option C. Conduct comprehensive market analysis, assess regulatory requirements for the proposed service, and engage in preliminary discussions with potential partners to gauge mutual interest and strategic fit. Option D. Focus solely on securing funding and developing the core technology, deferring any partner discussions or regulatory considerations until the product is fully developed. The correct answer is A. Immediately begin drafting partnership agreements and initiating joint marketing efforts to secure first-mover advantage. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in business development, balancing the need for rapid market entry with the imperative to adhere to regulatory compliance throughout the business development lifecycle. The professional challenge lies in accurately identifying and executing the appropriate activities at each stage, ensuring that all actions are legally sound and ethically defensible within the specified regulatory framework. Failure to do so can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and the collapse of the business development initiative. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between proactive, compliant engagement and potentially misleading or premature actions. The correct approach involves a systematic progression through the business development lifecycle, beginning with thorough market research and opportunity identification, followed by strategic planning, engagement and negotiation, and finally, closing and post-deal integration. Each stage has specific, legally defined activities. For instance, in the initial stages, activities must be focused on information gathering and assessment, avoiding any commitments or representations that could be construed as binding agreements before due diligence is complete and regulatory approvals are secured. This aligns with the principles of good faith and fair dealing, and ensures that all parties are operating with accurate information, a cornerstone of regulatory compliance in business transactions. An incorrect approach that prematurely moves to contract negotiation without adequate market validation or due diligence fails to respect the sequential nature of the business development lifecycle. This can lead to entering into agreements based on flawed assumptions, potentially violating consumer protection laws or securities regulations if misrepresentations are made. Another incorrect approach, such as initiating extensive marketing campaigns before product or service readiness and regulatory approval, could be seen as deceptive advertising or a violation of pre-market approval requirements, depending on the specific industry. Engaging in aggressive sales tactics without proper disclosure of risks or terms, even if not explicitly prohibited by a specific statute, can violate ethical codes of conduct and general principles of fair business practice, potentially leading to regulatory scrutiny. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding the regulatory landscape relevant to their specific industry and jurisdiction at the outset of any business development initiative. This involves mapping out the typical stages of the business development lifecycle and identifying the legally permissible and ethically required activities at each juncture. A robust process includes seeking legal counsel early and often, conducting thorough due diligence, and ensuring all communications and actions are transparent and accurate. The framework should encourage a phased approach, where each stage's successful completion is a prerequisite for advancing to the next, thereby mitigating risks and ensuring compliance. Question 6. Governance review demonstrates that a business development professional is aware of a potential conflict of interest arising from a personal investment in a competitor of a prospective client. The professional is also aware that the prospective client has specific, non-public information about market trends that would be highly valuable to the professional's firm if disclosed. The professional is under significant pressure to close the deal with this prospective client. Which of the following approaches best upholds the principles of building trust and maintaining integrity within the regulatory framework for a certified business development professional? Option A. Inform the prospective client about the personal investment, but emphasize its minor nature and assure them that it will not influence professional judgment, proceeding with the deal without further consultation. Option B. Leverage the prospective client's non-public market trend information to strengthen the firm's negotiating position, while downplaying the significance of the personal investment to avoid jeopardizing the deal. Option C. Proactively disclose the personal investment to the prospective client and the firm's compliance department, and seek guidance on managing the conflict before proceeding with any further discussions or negotiations. Option D. Proceed with the deal negotiations, focusing on securing the client's business and only disclosing the personal investment if directly asked by the prospective client or the firm. The correct answer is C. Proactively disclose the personal investment to the prospective client and the firm's compliance department, and seek guidance on managing the conflict before proceeding with any further discussions or negotiations. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for business development with the long-term imperative of maintaining trust and integrity, which are foundational to sustainable business growth and regulatory compliance. The Certified Business Development Professional (CBDP) designation implies a commitment to ethical conduct and adherence to specific professional standards, which are often underpinned by regulatory frameworks designed to protect clients, investors, and the market. The pressure to secure a deal can create a temptation to overlook or downplay potential conflicts of interest or misrepresent information, jeopardizing both the professional's reputation and the firm's standing. The correct approach involves proactively identifying and disclosing potential conflicts of interest to all relevant parties, seeking independent advice where necessary, and ensuring that all representations made are accurate and substantiated. This aligns with the core principles of integrity and transparency expected of CBDP. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing financial services or professional conduct, typically mandate such disclosure and prohibit deceptive practices. Upholding these standards is not merely a matter of compliance, but a strategic imperative for building enduring client relationships and a strong market reputation. An incorrect approach that involves withholding information about a potential conflict of interest is a direct violation of ethical codes and often regulatory requirements. Such actions erode trust, can lead to legal repercussions, and damage the firm's credibility. Another incorrect approach, which is to proceed without fully understanding the implications of a disclosed conflict, demonstrates a failure to exercise due diligence and professional skepticism. This can result in decisions that are not in the best interest of the client or the firm, potentially leading to regulatory sanctions or reputational damage. Finally, an approach that prioritizes short-term deal closure over ethical considerations, even if the information is technically accurate, can still be misleading if it omits crucial context or fails to address potential risks transparently. This can be interpreted as a breach of integrity and a disregard for professional responsibilities. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that begins with a thorough understanding of the relevant regulatory and ethical obligations. When faced with a potential conflict, the first step is to identify it clearly. Subsequently, assess the nature and severity of the conflict and its potential impact on all stakeholders. The next step is to consult internal policies, professional codes of conduct, and applicable regulations. If the conflict cannot be mitigated or eliminated, full and transparent disclosure to all affected parties is paramount. Seeking guidance from legal counsel or compliance officers is advisable. The ultimate decision should prioritize integrity, transparency, and the long-term sustainability of business relationships over immediate gains. Question 7. Stakeholder feedback indicates that the current financial projections for a key growth initiative are perceived as overly ambitious by some internal teams, potentially impacting investor confidence. As the business development professional responsible for securing funding for this initiative, what is the most appropriate course of action to ensure ethical and regulatory compliance while still pursuing the growth objective? Option A. Proceed with presenting the current optimistic financial projections to potential investors, emphasizing the company's aggressive growth strategy and the potential for high returns, while downplaying internal concerns about achievability. Option B. Acknowledge the internal feedback, but maintain the current optimistic projections, instructing internal teams to align their communication and efforts with the stated targets without further detailed validation or revision. Option C. Conduct a thorough review of the financial projections, seeking input from relevant internal teams to identify realistic assumptions and potential risks, and then revise the projections to reflect a more grounded, evidence-based outlook, clearly articulating any assumptions and risk mitigation strategies to potential investors. Option D. Focus solely on meeting the aggressive growth target outlined in the current projection, assuming that successful execution will ultimately validate the initial optimism, and deferring any detailed justification of assumptions until later stages. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough review of the financial projections, seeking input from relevant internal teams to identify realistic assumptions and potential risks, and then revise the projections to reflect a more grounded, evidence-based outlook, clearly articulating any assumptions and risk mitigation strategies to potential investors. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for business development professionals in SMEs, balancing aggressive growth targets with the ethical and regulatory obligations of accurate financial representation. The pressure to secure funding can lead to a temptation to overstate performance or future prospects, which can have severe consequences if not managed responsibly. The professional challenge lies in navigating this pressure while upholding integrity and adhering to relevant financial reporting standards and disclosure requirements. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough, evidence-based review of financial projections, supported by realistic assumptions and documented data. This aligns with the principles of transparency and due diligence expected in business development, particularly when seeking external investment. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing financial disclosures and investor relations, e.g., relevant sections of the Companies Act or FCA Handbook if operating within the UK, or SEC regulations if operating within the US, depending on the specified jurisdiction for the CBDP exam, mandate that financial information presented to potential investors be accurate and not misleading. Ethical codes of conduct for business professionals also emphasize honesty and integrity in all dealings. By ensuring projections are grounded in reality and supported by verifiable data, the business development professional acts in accordance with these principles, fostering trust and long-term viability. Incorrect approaches analysis. Presenting projections that are overly optimistic without clear, documented justification, and without acknowledging potential risks, fails to meet the standards of accuracy and transparency. This can be considered misleading under various financial regulations and ethical codes, potentially leading to misrepresentation of the company's financial health. Such an approach erodes investor confidence and can have legal repercussions. Focusing solely on achieving the growth target without a rigorous validation of the underlying financial assumptions demonstrates a disregard for due diligence. This approach prioritizes short-term gains over sustainable and ethical business practices, potentially violating regulatory requirements for fair dealing and accurate representation of business performance. Ignoring stakeholder concerns about the achievability of projections and proceeding with the current optimistic outlook is a failure of communication and ethical responsibility. It suggests a lack of engagement with internal feedback and a potential disregard for the accuracy of information being presented externally, which can contravene principles of good corporate governance and responsible business conduct. Professional reasoning. Professionals in business development must adopt a framework that prioritizes integrity and compliance. This involves 1. Understanding the specific regulatory environment governing financial disclosures and investor interactions for their jurisdiction. 2. Establishing clear internal processes for validating financial projections, including scenario planning and risk assessment. 3. Maintaining open and honest communication with all stakeholders, both internal and external, regarding financial performance and prospects. 4. Seeking expert advice when necessary to ensure compliance and accuracy. The ultimate goal is to build sustainable relationships based on trust and verifiable performance, rather than short-term, potentially misleading gains. Question 8. The efficiency study reveals that a new software vendor, with whom the business development professional has a close personal friendship and a pre-existing financial investment, is a leading candidate for a significant contract with the firm's most important client. The professional is responsible for leading the evaluation of potential vendors for this contract. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Disclose the personal friendship and financial investment to the firm's management, but continue to lead the evaluation process, assuring them that objectivity will be maintained. Option B. Immediately disclose the personal friendship and financial investment to the client and the firm's management, and recuse oneself from all aspects of the vendor evaluation process. Option C. Proceed with the vendor evaluation, but make a note in the internal report that a personal friendship exists, believing it will not influence the objective assessment. Option D. Discreetly attempt to steer the evaluation towards the preferred vendor, rationalizing that the friendship will ensure a good working relationship if they are selected. The correct answer is B. Immediately disclose the personal friendship and financial investment to the client and the firm's management, and recuse oneself from all aspects of the vendor evaluation process. Explanation. This scenario presents a common yet critical challenge in business development, managing conflicts of interest that can compromise objectivity and client trust. A professional challenge lies in balancing the pursuit of new business opportunities with the imperative to act in the best interests of existing clients and the firm. Failure to manage this effectively can lead to reputational damage, regulatory sanctions, and loss of business. Careful judgment is required to identify potential conflicts, assess their severity, and implement appropriate mitigation strategies. The correct approach involves immediate disclosure and recusal. This demonstrates transparency and upholds the ethical duty to avoid situations where personal interests could influence professional judgment. By disclosing the relationship with the potential vendor and recusing oneself from further involvement in the selection process, the business development professional prioritizes the client's best interests and adheres to the principles of integrity and objectivity. This aligns with regulatory frameworks that mandate disclosure of potential conflicts and require professionals to act with due diligence and in good faith. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the evaluation without disclosure, rationalizing that the personal relationship would not influence the decision. This is a direct violation of ethical standards and regulatory requirements. It creates an undisclosed conflict of interest, undermining the integrity of the selection process and potentially exposing the firm to legal and reputational risks. The professional's duty is to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. Another incorrect approach would be to disclose the conflict, but continue to participate in the evaluation, believing that the disclosure somehow neutralizes the conflict. While disclosure is a necessary first step, it is insufficient when the conflict is significant and directly impacts the decision-making process. In such cases, recusal is essential to ensure impartiality and prevent any perception of bias. This approach fails to adequately mitigate the conflict. A further incorrect approach would be to attempt to influence the selection process in favor of the known vendor, even after disclosure. This is a severe ethical breach and likely a regulatory violation, as it demonstrates a clear prioritization of personal gain or relationship over the client's objective needs and the firm's professional obligations. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a proactive identification of potential conflicts of interest. This includes understanding personal relationships, financial interests, and any other affiliations that could create a bias. Upon identification, the professional must assess the nature and severity of the conflict and its potential impact on the client and the firm. The next step is to consult internal policies and relevant regulations. If a conflict exists, the primary course of action should be to disclose it to all relevant parties and, if necessary, recuse oneself from the decision-making process. Documentation of the conflict and the actions taken is also crucial. Question 9. Strategic planning requires a robust framework for execution within large corporations. Considering the potential for internal resistance and the need for cross-functional alignment, which approach is most likely to ensure the successful implementation of a new business development strategy, adhering to professional standards of accountability and ethical conduct? Option A. Delegate the entire implementation process to a single, high-performing individual within the business development department, empowering them to drive the initiative. Option B. Establish a dedicated, cross-functional implementation team with clearly defined roles, responsibilities, and performance metrics, reporting to a senior executive sponsor. Option C. Form a steering committee composed of representatives from various departments, tasked with providing guidance and seeking consensus on all implementation steps. Option D. Assign primary responsibility for implementation to the department most directly impacted by the new strategy, trusting their existing operational structures. The correct answer is B. Establish a dedicated, cross-functional implementation team with clearly defined roles, responsibilities, and performance metrics, reporting to a senior executive sponsor. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in large corporations where the established business development strategy, while sound in principle, faces resistance during implementation due to internal political dynamics and a lack of clear accountability. The professional challenge lies in navigating these complexities to ensure the strategy translates into tangible results without compromising ethical standards or regulatory compliance. Careful judgment is required to balance strategic objectives with the practical realities of organizational change. The correct approach involves establishing a dedicated cross-functional implementation team with clearly defined roles, responsibilities, and performance metrics directly linked to the strategic goals. This team should report to a senior executive sponsor who can champion the initiative and resolve interdepartmental conflicts. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the implementation gap by creating a structured mechanism for execution, fostering collaboration, and ensuring accountability. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, this structured approach promotes transparency and fairness in resource allocation and decision-making, aligning with principles of good corporate governance and responsible business conduct, which are implicitly expected of certified business development professionals. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on the existing departmental structures to execute the strategy without any dedicated oversight or coordination. This fails because it ignores the inherent silos and potential conflicts of interest within large organizations, leading to fragmented efforts and a lack of ownership. Ethically, this can lead to a situation where no one is truly accountable for the success or failure of the initiative, potentially resulting in wasted resources and missed opportunities, which is a failure of professional duty. Another incorrect approach is to empower a single department to lead the implementation without adequate buy-in or resources from other critical functions. This can lead to resentment, resistance, and a strategy that is not holistically integrated into the organization's operations. Regulatory and ethical concerns arise from the potential for this approach to create an uneven playing field, where certain departments benefit at the expense of others, and it may not align with broader corporate social responsibility objectives if the strategy's impact is not considered across the entire value chain. A third incorrect approach is to delegate implementation to a committee with no clear authority or decision-making power, relying on consensus for every step. While collaboration is important, this method can lead to paralysis by analysis and a significant delay in execution. This is professionally unsound, as it fails to provide the necessary impetus for action and can be seen as a way to avoid making difficult decisions, potentially leading to a breach of fiduciary duty if strategic objectives are not met due to inaction. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough assessment of the organizational landscape, including identifying key stakeholders, potential roadblocks, and existing power structures. It requires a proactive approach to designing an implementation framework that fosters collaboration, assigns clear accountability, and secures senior leadership support. Professionals must prioritize ethical considerations and regulatory compliance throughout the process, ensuring that the chosen implementation strategy is both effective and responsible. Question 10. The efficiency study reveals that a key competitor has recently launched a product with features that directly challenge our company's market position. To prepare a compelling proposal for a potential client, you are considering how to present this competitive information. Which of the following approaches best aligns with ethical business development practices and regulatory compliance? Option A. Obtain internal product development documents from the competitor through informal channels, such as social media connections with their employees, to understand their future roadmap and potential vulnerabilities. Option B. Create a presentation that exaggerates the competitor's product flaws and downplays their strengths, suggesting they are significantly behind our offerings, even if this requires some embellishment of the facts. Option C. Focus the competitive analysis on highlighting only the negative aspects of the competitor's product, omitting any positive attributes or market successes they may have achieved. Option D. Compile a report that focuses solely on publicly available information about the competitor's product, including their stated features, pricing, and any market reception reported in reputable industry publications, while also highlighting our company's unique value proposition. The correct answer is D. Compile a report that focuses solely on publicly available information about the competitor's product, including their stated features, pricing, and any market reception reported in reputable industry publications, while also highlighting our company's unique value proposition. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a business development professional to balance the pursuit of competitive advantage with ethical and regulatory obligations. The temptation to gain an unfair advantage by misrepresenting competitor information is significant, but doing so can lead to severe legal and reputational consequences. Careful judgment is required to ensure that competitive analysis is conducted ethically and within the bounds of applicable regulations. The correct approach involves gathering publicly available information and conducting legitimate market research to understand competitor strategies, pricing, and product offerings. This method upholds ethical standards by respecting intellectual property and avoiding deceptive practices. It aligns with regulatory frameworks that prohibit unfair competition and misrepresentation. By focusing on observable market data and avoiding any form of industrial espionage or the use of confidential information obtained improperly, the professional acts with integrity and minimizes legal risk. An incorrect approach of fabricating or exaggerating competitor weaknesses to influence a client's perception is ethically unsound and potentially illegal. This constitutes misrepresentation and can be considered a deceptive trade practice, violating principles of fair competition. It erodes trust with clients and can lead to legal action if discovered. Another incorrect approach, that of using proprietary information obtained through unauthorized means, such as hacking or bribing employees of competitor firms, is a clear violation of numerous laws and ethical codes. This constitutes industrial espionage, theft of trade secrets, and potentially other criminal offenses. Such actions not only carry severe legal penalties, but also irrevocably damage the professional's reputation and the firm's standing. A further incorrect approach, that of selectively presenting only negative information about competitors while omitting positive aspects, is misleading and unethical. While not as egregious as fabricating information, it still distorts the competitive landscape and prevents the client from making a fully informed decision. This practice can be seen as a form of manipulation and undermines the professional's credibility. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear adherence to ethical principles and a thorough understanding of relevant regulations. Professionals should always prioritize transparency, honesty, and fairness. When in doubt about the legality or ethicality of a particular information gathering method, it is crucial to consult with legal counsel or senior management. The focus should always be on building long-term relationships based on trust and integrity, rather than seeking short-term gains through unethical or illegal means. Question 11. Upon reviewing potential expansion strategies for a company operating across multiple business models, including a subscription service, a direct sales division, and a platform-as-a-service (PaaS) offering, what is the most critical regulatory consideration for the business development team when tailoring their approach to each model? Option A. Prioritizing the development of robust data analytics capabilities to track customer engagement and sales performance across all business segments. Option B. Identifying and adhering to specific legal and regulatory requirements that govern consumer protection, data privacy, and contractual obligations unique to each distinct business model within the applicable jurisdiction. Option C. Ensuring that all marketing materials and sales pitches are consistent in branding and messaging across all business models to maintain a unified corporate identity. Option D. Focusing on achieving aggressive revenue targets by leveraging economies of scale and cross-selling opportunities between the different business units. The correct answer is C. Ensuring that all marketing materials and sales pitches are consistent in branding and messaging across all business models to maintain a unified corporate identity. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a business development professional to navigate the complexities of different business models while adhering strictly to the regulatory framework of the Certified Business Development Professional (CBDP) exam, which is assumed to be based on a specific, unstated jurisdiction for this exercise. The core challenge lies in ensuring that business development strategies are not only commercially viable, but also compliant with the relevant regulations governing each business model. This demands a nuanced understanding of how regulatory requirements intersect with operational and strategic decisions. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the regulatory landscape applicable to each distinct business model being considered. This means identifying specific regulations that govern subscription-based services, direct sales, and platform-as-a-service (PaaS) offerings within the relevant jurisdiction. Business development activities must then be designed to align with these identified regulations, ensuring transparency, fair practices, and consumer protection where applicable. For instance, if the jurisdiction has specific consumer protection laws related to recurring billing for subscription services or disclosure requirements for direct sales, these must be integrated into the business development strategy. This approach prioritizes compliance and ethical conduct, mitigating legal risks and building long-term trust with stakeholders. An incorrect approach would be to apply a one-size-fits-all business development strategy without considering the unique regulatory implications of each business model. For example, assuming that marketing and sales practices suitable for a direct sales model are automatically compliant for a subscription service would be a significant regulatory failure. This could lead to violations of consumer protection laws, data privacy regulations, or unfair competition statutes, depending on the specific jurisdiction. Another incorrect approach would be to overlook the regulatory nuances of PaaS, such as data security and intellectual property protection requirements, which are critical for platform-based businesses. Such oversights can result in substantial fines, reputational damage, and legal challenges. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic risk assessment and compliance review. Before launching or adapting business development strategies for different business models, professionals should 1. Identify all relevant business models. 2. Research and understand the specific regulatory requirements applicable to each model within the governing jurisdiction. 3. Consult with legal and compliance experts to ensure strategies are fully compliant. 4. Develop and implement business development plans that explicitly incorporate these regulatory considerations. 5. Continuously monitor for changes in regulations and adapt strategies accordingly. This proactive and informed approach ensures that business development efforts are both effective and legally sound. Question 12. The audit findings indicate that the current business development strategy is not yielding the expected results, suggesting potential inaccuracies in the initial identification of target markets and customer segmentation. As a certified business development professional, CBDP, what is the most appropriate course of action to address these findings and realign the strategy? Option A. Intensify sales outreach efforts to existing customer lists without reevaluating the underlying market segmentation or target market assumptions. Option B. Immediately shift focus to a new, untested market segment based on a single promising lead from a recent networking event. Option C. Conduct a thorough review and validation of existing market research data, followed by a systematic resegmentation of the market and identification of the most viable target markets based on refined insights. Option D. Acknowledge the audit findings but proceed with the current strategy, assuming the market will eventually respond positively. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough review and validation of existing market research data, followed by a systematic resegmentation of the market and identification of the most viable target markets based on refined insights. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the Certified Business Development Professional, CBDP, to navigate a situation where initial market research, a foundational element of business development, appears to be flawed or incomplete, potentially leading to misallocated resources and ineffective strategies. The audit findings suggest a need for rigorous reevaluation, demanding a systematic and compliant approach to market analysis. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any subsequent actions are grounded in accurate data and adhere to ethical business development practices, particularly concerning the identification and understanding of target markets and customer segmentation. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review and validation of the existing market research data, followed by a structured process of resegmentation and target market identification. This entails employing a variety of qualitative and quantitative research methodologies to gain a deeper understanding of customer needs, behaviors, and preferences. The CBDP must then use this refined understanding to define precise customer segments and identify the most viable target markets. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the audit findings by ensuring that the foundation of the business development strategy market understanding is robust and accurate. It aligns with the ethical imperative to conduct business development activities based on sound data and analysis, thereby maximizing the likelihood of success and minimizing wasted effort and resources. This methodical process ensures that decisions are informed and defensible, upholding professional standards. An incorrect approach that involves immediately pivoting to a new, unresearched market based on anecdotal evidence or a single, potentially biased, customer complaint fails to address the root cause of the audit findings. This is ethically problematic as it bypasses the necessary due diligence and relies on speculation rather than data-driven insights, potentially leading to further missteps and financial losses for the organization. It also demonstrates a lack of professional rigor in market analysis. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the audit findings as minor and proceed with the existing strategy without further investigation, is professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a disregard for internal controls and feedback mechanisms, which are crucial for continuous improvement. It also risks perpetuating flawed market assumptions, leading to continued inefficiency and potentially damaging the organization's reputation and financial health. This approach neglects the fundamental responsibility of a CBDP to ensure strategic alignment with market realities. A third incorrect approach, which is to focus solely on sales tactics and outreach, without re-evaluating the underlying market segmentation and target market identification, is also flawed. While sales execution is vital, it must be built upon a solid understanding of who the customers are and where they are. Without this foundational market research, sales efforts can be misdirected, inefficient, and ultimately unsuccessful, failing to address the core issues highlighted by the audit. This approach prioritizes execution over strategic accuracy. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured, data-driven approach. First, thoroughly understand and acknowledge the audit findings. Second, initiate a comprehensive review of all relevant market research and analysis. Third, identify any gaps or inaccuracies in the existing data and develop a plan to address them using appropriate research methodologies. Fourth, resegment the market and identify target markets based on the validated and refined data. Fifth, develop and implement business development strategies that are directly aligned with these identified segments and markets. Throughout this process, maintain transparency and communicate findings and proposed actions to relevant stakeholders. Question 13. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a new fintech product being developed by your firm has the potential for significant market disruption, but also introduces novel data handling and transaction processing mechanisms that may not be explicitly covered by existing U.S. financial regulations. What is the most compliant and professionally responsible approach for the business development team to take? Option A. Immediately engage the firm's legal and compliance departments to conduct a comprehensive review of the proposed product's features against all applicable U.S. federal and state financial regulations, and incorporate their guidance into the development process from the outset. Option B. Proceed with full product development, assuming that existing regulatory frameworks will be interpreted to accommodate the new features, and address any compliance issues that arise post-launch. Option C. Prioritize market launch and competitive advantage by developing the product as quickly as possible, deferring in-depth regulatory review until after the product has gained market traction. Option D. Develop the product based on the perceived market demand and competitive landscape, and then seek informal guidance from industry peers on potential regulatory concerns before a formal review. The correct answer is B. Proceed with full product development, assuming that existing regulatory frameworks will be interpreted to accommodate the new features, and address any compliance issues that arise post-launch. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a certified business development professional, CBDP, by requiring them to navigate the delicate balance between pursuing innovative business opportunities and adhering to the stringent regulatory framework governing financial services in the United States. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating potential compliance risks associated with novel product development, particularly when those innovations might touch upon areas with established, but potentially outdated, regulatory oversight. The CBDP must exercise careful judgment to ensure that the pursuit of innovation does not inadvertently lead to violations of securities laws, consumer protection regulations, or anti-money laundering (AML) requirements. The pressure to be first to market with new offerings can create a temptation to overlook or downplay regulatory hurdles, making a robust compliance-first approach essential. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves proactively engaging with legal and compliance departments early in the innovation lifecycle. This strategy is right because it aligns with the fundamental principles of regulatory compliance in the U.S. financial services industry. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit and letter of regulations such as the Securities Act of 1933, the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, the Investment Advisors Act of 1940, and the Bank Secrecy Act, BSA, which mandate that financial products and services must be offered in a manner that protects investors and maintains market integrity. By involving legal and compliance teams from the outset, the CBDP ensures that potential regulatory implications are identified, assessed, and addressed before significant resources are committed to development. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of developing a product that is non-compliant, thereby avoiding costly remediation, reputational damage, and potential enforcement actions by bodies like the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, or the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN. This approach embodies a culture of compliance, which is a cornerstone of responsible business development in regulated sectors. Incorrect approach is analysis. Proceeding with product development based on an assumption that existing regulations will accommodate the innovation, without explicit legal and compliance review, is an incorrect approach. This fails to acknowledge the complexity and specificity of U.S. financial regulations. Innovations often introduce novel features or target new customer segments that may fall outside the clear scope of existing rules, creating ambiguity and a high risk of non-compliance. Relying on assumptions rather than expert review can lead to violations of disclosure requirements, suitability rules, or AML reporting obligations. Developing the product and then seeking regulatory approval or guidance as a post-development step is also an incorrect approach. This reactive strategy is inherently risky and inefficient. It often results in significant sunk costs if the product is deemed non-compliant or requires substantial modification. Furthermore, it can signal a disregard for regulatory due diligence, potentially attracting closer scrutiny from regulators and damaging the firm's reputation. This approach neglects the principle of building compliance into the design from the ground up, focusing solely on the potential market demand and competitive advantage of the innovation, while deferring detailed regulatory assessment until later stages, is another incorrect approach. While market understanding is crucial for business development, prioritizing it over regulatory compliance in a highly regulated industry is a critical failure. This oversight can lead to the development of a product that, while potentially popular, is illegal to offer or operate, rendering the entire development effort futile and exposing the firm to severe penalties. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of the foundational requirement that all business activities within the U.S. financial services sector must operate within the bounds of applicable laws and regulations. Professional reasoning. Professionals in business development within regulated industries must adopt a compliance-by-design mindset. The decision-making process should prioritize understanding the regulatory landscape as a foundational element of any new initiative. This involves 1. Identifying all potentially relevant regulatory bodies and statutes applicable to the proposed innovation. 2. Engaging legal and compliance experts at the earliest conceptual stages to conduct a thorough risk assessment. 3. Incorporating compliance requirements into the product design and development roadmap. 4. Establishing clear internal processes for ongoing monitoring and adaptation to evolving regulations. This systematic approach ensures that innovation is pursued responsibly, ethically, and legally, safeguarding both the firm and its stakeholders. Question 14. Examination of the data shows that a promising innovation project has been proposed by an external partner, but the partner has shared preliminary proprietary information regarding their unique technology without a formal non-disclosure agreement, NDA, in place, and the project's success hinges on integrating this technology with the company's existing intellectual property. The partner is now requesting a commitment to proceed with the project, implying a desire for a significant stake in any future commercialization. Option A. Halt all discussions and development related to the innovation project until a comprehensive NDA is signed, clearly defining intellectual property ownership, usage rights, and confidentiality obligations for all shared information. Option B. Proceed with developing a proof of concept using the shared information, but keep the development team strictly compartmentalized and avoid any integration with the company's core intellectual property until formal agreements are finalized. Option C. Immediately proceed with the project, leveraging the shared information to develop the integrated solution, and address intellectual property rights and commercialization terms later once the project demonstrates success. Option D. Accept the partner's implied request for a significant stake in commercialization upfront, based on the potential of their technology, and begin integration without formalizing intellectual property ownership or confidentiality terms to foster goodwill. The correct answer is C. Immediately proceed with the project, leveraging the shared information to develop the integrated solution and address intellectual property rights and commercialization terms later once the project demonstrates success. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the pursuit of innovation with the ethical obligation to ensure that intellectual property is protected and that all stakeholders are treated fairly. The Certified Business Development Professional, CBDP, must navigate potential conflicts of interest and maintain transparency, especially when dealing with proprietary information that could benefit one party disproportionately. Careful judgment is required to uphold ethical standards and regulatory compliance, while fostering a collaborative environment for innovation. The correct approach involves a transparent and documented process for evaluating the innovation proposal, ensuring that any proprietary information shared by the potential partner is handled with strict confidentiality, and that the company's own intellectual property is safeguarded. This aligns with ethical principles of honesty, integrity, and fairness, and regulatory frameworks that govern intellectual property rights and fair dealing in business transactions. Specifically, it upholds the duty of care owed to the company and its shareholders by ensuring that any potential partnership or licensing agreement is structured to maximize benefit while mitigating risk, and that all parties are aware of and agree to the terms of intellectual property ownership and usage. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the innovation project without a clear agreement on intellectual property rights. This could lead to disputes, legal challenges, and reputational damage. It fails to uphold the ethical duty of diligence and transparency, potentially exposing the company to significant financial and legal liabilities. Another incorrect approach would be to unilaterally adopt the partner's innovative concept without proper acknowledgement or compensation, which constitutes a breach of trust and potentially infringes on intellectual property rights, violating ethical standards of fair dealing and potentially legal statutes related to intellectual property theft or misappropriation. A third incorrect approach would be to dismiss the innovation outright due to a perceived lack of immediate profitability, without a thorough evaluation of its long-term strategic value or potential for future development, which demonstrates a failure in strategic foresight and a lack of due diligence in exploring opportunities that could benefit the company. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and regulatory compliance. This involves clearly defining the scope of the project, establishing clear lines of communication, documenting all agreements and discussions, and seeking legal counsel when necessary to ensure intellectual property is protected and all parties' rights are respected. A thorough due diligence process, including a review of intellectual property ownership and potential conflicts of interest, is paramount before committing resources to any innovation project. Question 15. Assessment of a business development professional's strategy for identifying and pursuing a significant new market opportunity, where the professional has gained insights into a competitor's upcoming product launch through a casual conversation with a former colleague now working at that competitor. The professional is considering using this information to preemptively adjust their company's marketing and product development plans to gain a competitive edge. Option A. Systematically research publicly available information and industry trends to understand the competitive landscape, and then initiate direct, transparent discussions with potential partners or clients to explore collaborative opportunities, ensuring all information gathering and engagement adheres to ethical guidelines and relevant business development regulations. Option B. Focus on the potential revenue gains from exploiting the competitor's upcoming launch, prioritizing speed in market response over detailed verification of the information or consideration of its ethical implications. Option C. Immediately leverage the information about the competitor's product launch to inform a rapid adjustment of the company's marketing strategy and accelerate the development of a counter-product, aiming to capture market share before the competitor's launch. Option D. Discreetly gather further details about the competitor's product from the former colleague, potentially offering incentives for more specific information, to build a comprehensive intelligence dossier for strategic advantage. The correct answer is A. Systematically research publicly available information and industry trends to understand the competitive landscape, and then initiate direct, transparent discussions with potential partners or clients to explore collaborative opportunities, ensuring all information gathering and engagement adheres to ethical guidelines and relevant business development regulations. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in business development, balancing aggressive pursuit of new opportunities with adherence to regulatory and ethical standards. The professional challenge lies in navigating the gray areas of information gathering and relationship building without crossing the line into unethical or illegal practices, particularly concerning the disclosure of material non-public information. The Certified Business Development Professional (CBDP) designation implies a commitment to upholding the highest ethical and professional standards, which are often codified in professional guidelines and relevant regulations. The correct approach involves a systematic and compliant process for identifying and evaluating new business opportunities. This means relying on publicly available information, industry research, and direct, transparent engagement with potential partners or clients. It emphasizes due diligence and a structured approach to opportunity assessment, ensuring that all actions are defensible and align with regulatory expectations regarding fair competition and information integrity. Specifically, this approach respects the principles of market transparency and prohibits the exploitation of privileged information for competitive advantage. An incorrect approach that involves leveraging confidential information obtained through informal channels or personal relationships for competitive gain is fundamentally flawed. This violates ethical principles of fairness and can lead to regulatory breaches, such as insider trading or anti-competitive practices, depending on the specific jurisdiction's laws. Such actions undermine market integrity and can result in severe penalties for the individual and the organization. Another incorrect approach, which focuses solely on the potential financial upside without adequate consideration for the legality and ethical implications of the methods used to acquire the opportunity, demonstrates a lack of professional judgment and a disregard for compliance. This can lead to reputational damage and legal repercussions. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed in closing deals over thorough due diligence and regulatory compliance is also professionally unsound. While speed is often a factor in business development, it must never come at the expense of ethical conduct and legal adherence. This can result in entering into agreements that are unsustainable, legally questionable, or damaging to the organization's long-term interests. The professional decision-making process for similar situations requires a robust framework that integrates ethical considerations and regulatory compliance into every stage of the business development lifecycle. This involves 1. Understanding and internalizing relevant regulations and ethical codes. 2. Conducting thorough due diligence on all potential opportunities, including the source of information. 3. Seeking legal and compliance counsel when in doubt. 4. Prioritizing transparency and fairness in all dealings. 5. Maintaining a strong ethical compass that guides decision-making even when faced with pressure to achieve results quickly. Question 16. Which approach would be most effective for a certified business development professional to identify and evaluate innovation opportunities within the strict confines of the Certified Business Development Professional (CBDP) regulatory framework, ensuring both market viability and compliance? Option A. Conducting a thorough market analysis to identify emerging trends and customer needs, followed by a comprehensive regulatory impact assessment and feasibility study for each promising opportunity. Option B. Prioritizing opportunities based solely on their perceived market demand and potential for rapid revenue generation, deferring regulatory checks to a later stage. Option C. Focusing on the technical feasibility of an innovation and its potential to disrupt existing markets, with regulatory considerations addressed only if significant roadblocks emerge. Option D. Relying on competitor success stories and industry buzz to gauge the potential of new ventures, without conducting independent verification or regulatory due diligence. The correct answer is A. Conducting a thorough market analysis to identify emerging trends and customer needs, followed by a comprehensive regulatory impact assessment and feasibility study for each promising opportunity. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because identifying and evaluating innovation opportunities requires a forward-looking perspective while remaining grounded in the current regulatory landscape and the firm's strategic objectives. Business development professionals must balance the potential upside of new ventures with the inherent risks and compliance obligations. Careful judgment is required to avoid pursuing opportunities that are either not viable or, more critically, violate regulatory mandates, which could lead to significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of license. The correct approach involves a systematic evaluation that prioritizes regulatory compliance and strategic alignment. This method ensures that potential innovation opportunities are assessed not only for their market potential, but also for their feasibility within the existing legal and ethical framework. By integrating regulatory due diligence early in the evaluation process, professionals can proactively identify and mitigate risks, thereby safeguarding the firm and its stakeholders. This aligns with the ethical duty of care and the regulatory requirement to conduct business in a manner that upholds the integrity of the financial markets and protects clients. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on market potential without considering regulatory implications is professionally unacceptable. This failure to integrate compliance into the initial assessment can lead to the pursuit of ventures that are fundamentally non-compliant, resulting in significant legal and financial repercussions. Such an approach demonstrates a disregard for the regulatory framework, which is a cornerstone of responsible business conduct. Another incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or the success of competitors without independent verification is also professionally unsound. This method lacks the rigor necessary for informed decision-making and can lead to misallocation of resources and the pursuit of ill-conceived opportunities. It fails to meet the professional standard of due diligence and can expose the firm to undue risk. Finally, an approach that delays regulatory review until the later stages of development is a critical error. This procrastination increases the likelihood of discovering insurmountable regulatory hurdles late in the process, leading to wasted investment and potential reputational damage. It signifies a lack of proactive risk management and a failure to adhere to best practices in innovation management. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured framework that begins with understanding the firm's strategic goals and risk appetite. This should be followed by a comprehensive scan of the market for potential innovation opportunities. Crucially, each identified opportunity must then undergo a rigorous evaluation that includes a thorough regulatory impact assessment, a feasibility study, and a financial viability analysis. This iterative process ensures that decisions are informed, compliant, and strategically aligned, minimizing risk and maximizing the potential for sustainable growth. Question 17. Implementation of a new market entry strategy for a technology firm in a jurisdiction with strict data privacy laws requires a business development professional to assess potential compliance challenges. Which of the following approaches best ensures adherence to regulatory frameworks? Option A. Conducting a detailed impact assessment to identify specific data privacy regulations, their implications for data handling and client interactions, and developing proactive compliance measures. Option B. Prioritizing the potential revenue growth from the new market and assuming that existing compliance protocols will suffice. Option C. Delegating the entire regulatory review process to the legal department and focusing solely on sales targets. Option D. Relying on general industry best practices for data handling without verifying their alignment with the specific laws of the target jurisdiction. Correct answer is A. Conducting a detailed impact assessment to identify specific data privacy regulations, their implications for data handling and client interactions, and developing proactive compliance measures. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a business development professional to navigate the complex interplay between strategic growth initiatives and stringent regulatory compliance, specifically within the context of the Certified Business Development Professional (CBDP) exam's defined jurisdiction. The core challenge lies in ensuring that the pursuit of new business opportunities does not inadvertently lead to violations of applicable laws and guidelines, which could result in significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and legal repercussions. The professional must exercise sound judgment to balance aggressive business development with a proactive and informed approach to regulatory adherence. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that systematically identifies potential regulatory risks associated with a proposed new market entry. This approach is right because it aligns with the fundamental principles of responsible business development and the explicit requirements of regulatory frameworks that mandate due diligence and risk management. By proactively analyzing how the new market's specific regulations, e.g., data privacy laws, anti-corruption statutes, industry-specific licensing requirements, might affect the business development strategy, the professional can develop mitigation plans and ensure that the expansion is conducted legally and ethically. This demonstrates a commitment to compliance, which is a cornerstone of professional conduct for a CBDP. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the potential revenue generation without considering regulatory implications is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for legal obligations and a prioritization of short-term financial gains over long-term sustainability and compliance. Such an approach risks significant regulatory breaches, leading to fines and reputational harm. Another incorrect approach that relies on assumptions about regulatory compliance without conducting a thorough assessment is also professionally flawed. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to understand the specific regulatory landscape of the target market. It exposes the organization to unforeseen legal challenges and potential noncompliance. Finally, an approach that delegates the entire regulatory review to a legal department without active involvement from the business development team is suboptimal. While legal counsel is crucial, the business development professional must possess a foundational understanding of the regulatory environment to effectively integrate compliance into their strategy and to identify potential issues early in the process. This lack of proactive engagement can lead to misaligned strategies and missed opportunities for compliant growth. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This begins with identifying all relevant regulatory obligations in the target jurisdiction. Next, the potential impact of these regulations on the proposed business development activities must be analyzed. This analysis should inform the development of strategies to mitigate identified risks and ensure compliance. Continuous monitoring and adaptation to evolving regulatory landscapes are also critical components of this process. Question 18. Governance review demonstrates that the business development team is prioritizing rapid expansion into emerging markets with limited IP enforcement infrastructure. While standard non-disclosure agreements, NDA, are being utilized, there is a lack of specific contractual provisions addressing the ownership, licensing, and enforcement of jointly developed or shared intellectual property with new international partners. What is the most appropriate approach to mitigate the significant risks associated with this situation? Option A. Delegate the entire responsibility for IP protection to the legal department, allowing them to draft standard IP addendums to existing NDAs without direct input from the business development team. Option B. Assume that the existing NDAs provide adequate protection and focus on accelerating market penetration, relying on the general legal frameworks of the target countries to address any future IP disputes. Option C. Implement a comprehensive IP due diligence process for all potential international partners. Negotiate bespoke IP clauses in all partnership agreements that clearly define ownership, usage rights, and enforcement mechanisms, and establish a clear internal protocol for IP asset management and monitoring in foreign markets. Option D. Prioritize securing market access by agreeing to broad IP sharing arrangements with partners, with the understanding that future disputes can be resolved through informal negotiation rather than formal contractual clauses. The correct answer is C. Implement a comprehensive IP due diligence process for all potential international partners. Negotiate bespoke IP clauses in all partnership agreements that clearly define ownership, usage rights, and enforcement mechanisms, and establish a clear internal protocol for IP asset management and monitoring in foreign markets. Explanation: this scenario presents a common implementation challenge in business development where the strategic value of intellectual property, IP, clashes with the practicalities of securing and enforcing it, particularly when dealing with international partners. The professional challenge lies in balancing aggressive market expansion goals with the fiduciary duty to protect the company's most valuable intangible assets. Failure to adequately address IP protection can lead to significant financial losses, erosion of competitive advantage, and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to navigate the complexities of differing legal frameworks and to ensure that business development activities are conducted ethically and in compliance with all applicable regulations. The correct approach involves proactively identifying and classifying the company's IP, conducting thorough due diligence on potential partners' IP practices and compliance records, and negotiating robust IP protection clauses in all agreements. This includes specifying ownership, usage rights, confidentiality obligations, and remedies for infringement. This approach is justified by the fundamental principles of IP law, which grant exclusive rights to creators and owners, and by the regulatory framework governing international business transactions, which necessitates clear contractual terms to define responsibilities and liabilities. Adhering to these principles ensures that the company's IP is safeguarded, thereby maximizing its value and mitigating risks associated with international expansion. An incorrect approach would be to assume that standard confidentiality agreements are sufficient for IP protection when dealing with international partners, especially in jurisdictions with weaker IP enforcement mechanisms. This fails to acknowledge that IP rights are territorial and that specific legal protections and enforcement strategies are required in each jurisdiction. Relying on generic agreements without tailored clauses for IP can leave the company vulnerable to unauthorized use, disclosure, or misappropriation of its innovations, leading to potential loss of market exclusivity and competitive advantage. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of market entry over thorough IP due diligence and negotiation. This might involve overlooking potential IP risks associated with a partner's existing technology or their history of IP compliance. Such a shortcut can lead to disputes, litigation, and significant financial and reputational damage, undermining the long-term success of the business development initiative. It also violates the ethical obligation to act with due diligence and to protect the company's assets. A third incorrect approach is to delegate IP protection solely to legal counsel without active involvement from the business development team. While legal expertise is crucial, business development professionals are on the front lines and possess critical insights into the commercial context and potential risks. Without their input, legal strategies may not be fully aligned with business objectives, potentially leading to agreements that are legally sound but commercially inadequate for IP protection. This can result in missed opportunities to secure IP rights or to implement effective risk mitigation strategies. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multidisciplinary approach. Business development professionals must be educated on the importance of IP and its role in strategic growth. They should collaborate closely with legal and IP experts from the outset of any international partnership discussion. A risk-based assessment of IP vulnerabilities should be conducted, and contractual terms should be meticulously negotiated to reflect the specific IP landscape of the target market and the nature of the partnership. Continuous monitoring and enforcement of IP rights post-agreement are also essential components of a comprehensive IP management strategy. Question 19. During the evaluation of a new international market entry strategy, a business development professional is tasked with optimizing the process to ensure rapid market penetration while adhering to all applicable regulations. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of responsible and compliant business development? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive regulatory impact assessment and consult with legal and compliance departments to integrate all identified requirements into the strategy before final approval and execution. Option B. Expedite the market entry by prioritizing sales team feedback on regulatory matters and proceeding with launch based on their perceived understanding of compliance. Option C. Focus primarily on achieving aggressive sales targets, deferring any detailed regulatory review until after initial market traction is established. Option D. Assume that the company's existing compliance protocols are sufficient for the new market and proceed with the strategy without a specific review of local regulations. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive regulatory impact assessment and consult with legal and compliance departments to integrate all identified requirements into the strategy before final approval and execution. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a business development professional to balance aggressive growth targets with the ethical and regulatory obligations of their role. The pressure to achieve ambitious objectives can lead to overlooking critical compliance steps, potentially resulting in significant legal and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to ensure that strategic planning is not only effective in driving business development, but also fully compliant with the relevant regulatory framework. The correct approach involves a thorough and documented assessment of all potential risks and regulatory implications before finalizing the business development strategy. This includes proactive engagement with legal and compliance teams to ensure that proposed initiatives align with all applicable laws and guidelines. This approach is the most professionally sound because it embeds compliance into the strategic planning process from the outset, thereby mitigating potential future issues. It directly addresses the regulatory requirement to conduct due diligence and ensure that business activities are conducted in a lawful and ethical manner, which is a fundamental principle for any certified business development professional. An approach that prioritizes speed and immediate market penetration without adequate regulatory review is professionally unacceptable. This failure to conduct proper due diligence and obtain necessary approvals before implementation constitutes a direct violation of regulatory frameworks that mandate compliance and risk management. Such an approach exposes the organization to significant legal penalties, fines, and reputational harm, undermining the long-term sustainability of the business development efforts. Another incorrect approach involves relying solely on the sales team's understanding of regulatory requirements. This is a critical failure because sales teams are typically focused on revenue generation and may not possess the specialized knowledge or mandate to interpret complex legal and regulatory landscapes. Delegating this responsibility without oversight from dedicated compliance or legal functions creates a significant compliance gap and increases the likelihood of unintentional breaches. A third incorrect approach is to assume that existing business practices are automatically compliant with new market regulations. Regulatory environments are dynamic, and new laws or amendments can significantly alter compliance obligations. Failing to conduct a specific review for each new market or initiative based on the assumption of prior compliance is a form of negligence that can lead to serious regulatory infractions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This framework should mandate the identification of all relevant regulatory requirements, consultation with legal and compliance experts, and the integration of compliance checks at each stage of strategy development and execution. Professionals must adopt a proactive, rather than reactive, stance towards compliance, ensuring that ethical considerations and regulatory adherence are integral components of all business development strategies. Question 20. Quality control measures reveal that the current business development plan for new market entry strategy is heavily focused on aggressive sales targets and rapid customer acquisition, with limited explicit consideration for the regulatory landscape of the target jurisdiction. Which of the following approaches best addresses this deficiency to ensure the plan's viability and compliance? Option A. Focus on developing innovative product features that will naturally differentiate the offering, believing that superior product quality will outweigh any potential regulatory hurdles. Option B. Implement a reactive compliance strategy, addressing any regulatory issues only as they arise during the market entry phase to minimize upfront planning complexity. Option C. Increase the marketing budget to ensure broader reach and faster customer acquisition, assuming that market dominance will preemptively address any minor regulatory concerns. Option D. Revise the plan to explicitly integrate regulatory compliance checks into each objective, strategy, and tactic, ensuring that all proposed actions are demonstrably aligned with the specific laws and guidelines of the target jurisdiction, and include risk mitigation strategies for potential regulatory challenges. The correct answer is D. Revise the plan to explicitly integrate regulatory compliance checks into each objective, strategy, and tactic, ensuring that all proposed actions are demonstrably aligned with the specific laws and guidelines of the target jurisdiction, and include risk mitigation strategies for potential regulatory challenges. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a business development professional to balance ambitious growth targets with the practical constraints and regulatory obligations of their operating jurisdiction. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that the proposed strategies and tactics for achieving goals are not only effective, but also compliant with the specific regulatory framework governing business development activities. A failure to align these elements can lead to significant legal repercussions, reputational damage, and ultimately, the failure of the business development plan itself. Careful judgment is required to identify strategies that are both aspirational and achievable within the legal and ethical boundaries. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the existing business development plan to ensure that the stated goals, objectives, strategies, and tactics are demonstrably aligned with the regulatory framework of the Certified Business Development Professional (CBDP) exam-specified jurisdiction. This means that each element of the plan must be scrutinized for compliance. For instance, if the jurisdiction has specific rules regarding marketing practices, data privacy, or fair competition, the strategies and tactics must explicitly incorporate these requirements. Objectives should be SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, and also R for regulatory compliant. Strategies should outline how these compliant objectives will be met, and tactics should detail the specific, actionable steps that adhere to all applicable laws and guidelines. This ensures that the plan is not only ambitious, but also legally sound and ethically responsible, fostering sustainable growth. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on aggressive market penetration without considering regulatory limitations is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the legal framework, potentially leading to violations of consumer protection laws, antitrust regulations, or data privacy statutes. Such an approach prioritizes short-term gains over long-term sustainability and compliance, risking fines, sanctions, and loss of operating licenses. Another incorrect approach that emphasizes rapid revenue generation through potentially misleading or unsubstantiated claims about products or services is also a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This violates principles of fair advertising and consumer trust, which are often codified in regulations designed to prevent deceptive trade practices. Professionals are ethically bound to ensure that all communications and business development activities are truthful and transparent. A third incorrect approach that neglects to integrate risk mitigation strategies specifically related to regulatory compliance within the business development plan is also flawed. This oversight can lead to unforeseen legal challenges and operational disruptions when the plan is implemented. A robust business development plan must proactively identify and address potential regulatory hurdles, rather than reacting to them after they arise. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic review of the business development plan against the relevant regulatory checklist for the specified jurisdiction. This includes consulting legal counsel or compliance officers when necessary. Professionals should adopt a mindset of compliance by design, embedding regulatory considerations into the very fabric of their strategic planning and tactical execution. This proactive and integrated approach ensures that business development efforts are not only effective in achieving goals, but also uphold the highest standards of legal and ethical conduct.